Good morning, good evening, good night. Welcome to another sessions of AJOG MFM, the Pink Journal live event. Happy New Year to everyone. And welcome again to Dr. Kavita Narang, herself a maternal fetal medicine, like a lot of us who are listening. We'll talk again today about happiness. And before I give her the word, I just want to say happy birthday to my mom, who is 86 today. And certainly that makes me very, very happy. Good morning, Kavita.
Good morning, Dr. Berghella. Thank you so much again for having me back here. And, I'm so excited to be here with all our listeners as well. And happy birthday to your mom. What a wonderful way to start off your day, talking about happiness in her honor as well. So wonderful. Thank you. All right. So, just welcoming back all our listeners today. We're going to again revisit. This is our second talk now on happiness. So, we're calling it our Happiness 2.0. Before we jump into the objectives of Dr. Berghella, I was just thinking, since we're talking about happiness and we know, gratitude is directly correlated to happiness, maybe we can start all of us. And I invite all our listeners as well to think about one thing you are grateful for right now. Dr. Berghella, do you want to share something that you're grateful for in this moment?
Sure. Immediate family, I think that comes up to mind since you called me a surprise there. My wife and four kids. I think the fact that they're healthy and happy and actually doing the things we'll talk about, kind of following the path, their own special path to happiness, which is very different for all of them, and kind of pursuing their goals. So that makes me, very grateful this morning. And what about you?
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I think there are big gratitudes, right? Like, I feel like for me right now, just in this moment, I can say that my life feels like it's in harmony. And I think that is something that I'm truly grateful for. I feel like career, family, love, friendship, personal life, finances, I feel like everything right now today feels very harmonious. So that's a huge gratitude for that.
Good
Yeah.
for you. Knowing your husband, I'm sure it's true.
Thank you. All right.
Um,
So, yeah, we'll jump right into our objectives here. So, if anyone missed our last session, we're hoping to make this a series to really delve deep into, the 6 points of evidence based happiness from Dr. Bergella's book. Last time we talked about social relationships on December 11th. So you can go back and watch that video if you've missed that. It's available on YouTube on AJOG MFM page there. And today we're really going to focus on doing what you like to do. How does that help you become a happier person, and how to set meaningful goals? And Dr. Berghella will start off and share some of the background there, and I will help bring in some of the coaching tools that you can use, practical tools in your day-to-day life that will be able to help you extract joy from these two big factors. And another hot off the press here, I just wanted to say thank you to AJOG MFM for giving, and especially Dr. Berghella for giving me this opportunity and a journal platform for me to bring up these important conversations about happiness and mindfulness, and helping physicians live happier lives. So yesterday we just published this new paper here, Anatomy of a Joyful Career, where I discuss how your mindset helps shape your view and your experience of the world, along with some practical tools in there to help you jumpstart your idea of how to reflect on your mindset and start your journey on happiness. So please check out this paper on the Pink Journal when you get a chance. Thank you.
and Kavita, people may forget you're also a life coach, not only
Yes.
a
Hmm.
physician, maternal fetal medicine specialist, etc. But so you really, are an expert in this field, and I've studied them, and I'm so happy that Educam FM could, further your work.
Thank
Um,
you.
I guess I'll jump in and talk about, the couple of things today are doing what you like to do and having goals. And that's what we'll probably concentrate for most of the hour. They're really evidence based. Last time we went over the fact that all of the stuff that we're talking about has a lot of evidence, randomized trials, papers in the Lancet, New England, etc. So to start off, let me read this quote. So Linus Pauling, I think, is one of two or three people ever in the history of the world to get two Nobel Prizes, one in chemistry, one in peace. And here's this quote: I don't think I ever sat down and asked myself, now what am I going to do in life? I just went ahead doing what I like to do. And I think about the phrase, no exaggeration, every day. And I say, okay, so what do I like to do? And I put that front and center in my thing. Yes, I may have, obviously to see patients. I may have, to check a schedule. I'm going to have, to take the kids to different things, which is actually a thing I do really like to do a lot. But I may have, something else. I want to spend an hour with my wife today, or I really want to, finish a paper. As you guys know, I like doing that, and I really try to get to that as soon as I can in the day. If I can, the first thing, at 7 in the morning. If I can't, I'm just going to fit it in. And choosing what I like to do, it has really empowered me to work to my
Mm-hmm.
strengths. And that's the second point of the slide. Really, really play to your strengths. I teach all the time, and some of you may have heard me say this. When you were in high school, you need to get an A in English, an A in math, an A in history, whatever. And you may have liked one of those more, but you need to excel in everything. Now you really can find a niche, especially you're going through your training. You may be a resident fellow, and especially early in your career, you can more and more as you advance decide what you like to do and tell everybody what what you like, and never place to your weaknesses. Tell people all the time, if you don't like statistics, say you learned a little bit, you understand, and you want to write papers, get a statistician. Get
Mm-hmm.
your buddy, and she will help you all along. If you like statistics but you don't like to write, there are plenty of people who like to write. If you like to recruit but you don't like to sign the RB, do it with somebody else. You really play to your strengths, and you have to. If you haven't yet, you have to go to Gallup.com, Clifton Strengths, as you can see here, and do. It's about $30, I think now. It takes you probably 15 minutes to take the survey, and eventually you come up with your top five of this 30 plus things, and each of us are different. I think it's 8 million of us. We're going to have the same sequence. So I'm sure Kavita and I are different, and I'm sure all of you, even if it's 2,000 of you, we probably each of us have different lists, which is amazing if you think about it. And for example, when I did this now, probably 10 years plus ago with SMFM leadership course, I found out that the number one is learner.
Same here. Yeah.
Makes so much sense. All I
Yeah.
like to do is to study something for myself, so I understand it. I can, get to the very, very bottom. I kind of want to be the person who knows the most about that. And then I apply it, I learn it, and I hopefully, help a patient around, help a mentee around, help a colleague around. But I want to learn about anything, and it's not only MFM. In fact, I want to learn how the software works, or the books that Kavita suggests. Um, so working to your top five strengths really helps you. Have you done it, Kavita?
I have, yes, Dr. Berghella, and yeah, and I
Yeah.
was fortunate to be able to attend the SMFM leadership course too, which, by the way, fantastic course. Shout out to the whole team, including yourself, who helps to lead that course. And yes, part of the thing is doing the strength. So my top strength is actually also learner, just like yours. So I
Oh,
really,
well, there you go.
yes, so I think I
Okay.
really relate to those traits that you were just describing right now. I feel like we definitely share that. Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think it's really helpful for anyone that's listening. Just take a moment to do this. And if it's not Gallup, there are also other free versions out there. If that is something that's easier for you to use, there's several out there, but this one probably has the most research backed up for it. And once you get those trends, sometimes it really allows you to reflect and be like, oh, this makes sense, that why I do these things well, and maybe why, what are things you might need to work on. So it's good reflection. So I really encourage everyone just to take some time, when you have a chance to really check this out.
My second, third, and fourth, whatever. One is woo. I like to actually get along with people, and woo them to my environment.
Oh.
I'm a maximizer as well, and that I was very happy about. Again, it was a surprise, but then thinking about it, I do try to work in a team, and get the rest of the team to achieve their own strengths and their own happiness and their own whatever it is success. And I had my two older sons. First one, the number one is achiever, and is an MD PhD
Oh,
student,
wow.
and
Yes.
in neuroscience. And the other one is a communicator. Communication is number one, and he works at a financial company, J.P. Morgan. But I always told him, you cannot work in a booth by yourself. You make sure that you work with lots of people because you need to communicate, um, and um, and he does, he does live to thinking about
Mm-hmm.
that strand. So it's really impossible, and to focus on some things, because I think it's impossible to be, people talk about triple threat, clinician, researcher, educator, a quadruple threat, also being some kind of administrator, president of the hospital, CEO, whatever some people achieve, even as being an OBGYN. Um, I think it's impossible, and I think you need to kind of decide somewhat early on. Yeah, I can do this two or three maximum, and really, the ones that I'm going to concentrate the most is educator or administrator, and you kind
Mm-hmm.
of decide that actually from fellowship, from residency, from your early career, because otherwise you burn out. I think if you want to do something well, you need to concentrate on it. And for me, this is my shameful slide in a way, immodest slide, but I really, as a learner, I kind of wrote a lot. I got involved into things. I'd never applied, to ACOG or ABOG or whatever, or SMFM for that matter, or AJOG MFM. I got the calls because people know what I like, and they thought, okay, you can help with up to date. You can do this. You can, and it's I truly never planned this career. I just went ahead saying, you know what, I like, again, preterm birth. How can we prevent it? Let me study it. Okay, when I study, I found something, and then I published it. And I can tell you, I am probably the most rejected human being in OBGYN. Maybe there's another two or three like me, but most of the papers I submit get rejected, and it's only because, within a week or two I send them again, and eventually I send it to 6 or 7 or 8 journals. Eventually I find something, and I have this kind of numbers. But if you want to succeed, you really need to double your failure rate. I instill this in my kids so much. You try, you try, you try. There is the story of the lady Rowling, the one that did, help me out, Kavita, the most published author, who did
Oh, J.K. Rowling for Harry Potter?
yeah, Harry
Yeah,
Potter.
yeah,
I
J.K.
think
Rowling. Yes, yes.
12 editors rejected
Yep.
her,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
everything, something crazy like that.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan didn't make his
Mm-hmm.
high school, team. Didn't even make JV for some time.
Mm-hmm.
I but they loved. She liked
First, yep.
writing. He loved playing basketball. There was
Yeah.
no stopping them, and eventually they worked really hard. We'll talk about that later on. Because you need to
Mhm.
work hard at your goals, and they got there. And the same thing with you. Don't let anybody stop you. If you have something you really like, uh,
Mm-hmm.
do what you like to do, and find. And you talked about this before. I know you believe this. Challenge. Find a challenge that matches your skill.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, we'll talk about myself and administration. That may not be my strength, but find something that you can achieve. You can
Mm-hmm.
do, that is not too easy, so you find it interesting and it's not too hard. Any comment on that? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think that's like, and I think this might be a good point where we might be able to share some stories, that kind of highlight this point. I have my personal story. You're absolutely right. Doing what you like to do, going back a little bit to where you started about the Nobel Prize winner. You have this mantra that you helps you remind yourself all the time to do the things you like to do. And I think everyone should have a mantra that it's like the voice they can bring and tell themselves at the back of their head when they're not sure what they're doing. I have my favorite is respond to every call that excites your spirit. I
Mhm.
This is always a wallpaper on my desktop background too, and it's by this famous poet called Rumi. I'm not sure if you've heard of Rumi before.
Mhm.
um, but that is such a beautiful reminder for me that anytime I'm doing something and I'm not sure, because a lot of times we're not sure, like, is this something I should pursue? I seem to be enjoying it. The moment you can feel, and you discuss this in your book, the state of flow is what you call it. The moment you
Yeah.
feel like excited about something, recognize that that is the moment where your strengths are at play. That is when you're enjoying doing what you're doing, and that's when you should just go for it, do it. And don't worry about the outcome, follow that intuition. And if you're playing to your strengths and the things that's exciting you, and you follow that, you are going to do well without realizing. It is going to lead you somewhere, you know and I think you're talking about the whole idea of failures and stuff too. I have a personal story of mine, right? And I would love to hear your story too, Dr. Berghella. But being born and raised in Bangkok, Thailand, right? That's where I did my medical school. And I think I shared this story with you before. When I was thinking of applying for residency in the US, as an international medical graduate, if there are any international medical graduates out there listening, it is a challenging task. It's not as easy as one thinks. And when I was deciding, I was like, should I do OBGYN or internal medicine? And everyone told me that, hey, if you're trying to go to the US, you really should do internal medicine because that's your chance of matching. And they're like, no one has matched to OBGYN in the past 30 years. It's a surgical specialty. From Thailand, no one gets to go there for OBGYN. And I remember doing my rotations and I was like, oh, maybe I should consider internal medicine. But my heart just every time I was in the delivery room, I was just like, no, this is what I like to do. Like it just felt like the perfect balance of medicine, peds, surgery. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. And I remember the number of people that told me, you're wasting your time, your energy, your money. Don't do it. And I said, no, I like this. I'm going to try. And when I submitted my applications too, I applied to, I remember, to 70 programs. And I think I told you, I got 69 rejections, right? Like that, it's profound. And I was starting to believe that, like, oh, maybe what everyone told me, like, I shouldn't do it. But then
Yeah.
I got that one interview and I said,
And I'm sure you nailed it.
and I was like, this is my only chance. It's now or never, right? And so you go there and you just exist in that state of flow. You're like, no, this when you are so sure about what you want to do, even how you're able to talk about it, how you're able to bring yourself, you're bringing your very authentic self. I think that is what really people can see that, right? And so I'm very grateful. I'm very fortunate, that things really worked out. And now I can say, yes, I managed, in the first in my country in the past 30 years. And since then, I've now been able to give back and mentor other students who say, hey, I want to go to the US for OBGYN. And I was like, you can do it. And so I think, just once you know what you like to do and willing to face those challenges and those failures, you're going to make it. That's kind of my little story here on this topic.
Yeah, and I have so many other stories. I myself, I was born in Italy, and but I went to college here,
Mm,
and then I applied. And back then, you sent checks, for the applications. That's how old I am. And I remember, I think it was a $50 check to NYU. Not to mention there were other universities, but they sent back the check. Many university actually cashed the check and just declined me, but they sent back the check saying, look, you were born in the U.S. and even if you're in
mhm,
college, a few miles away, you can we can't accept you for medical school. And I have been asked to be division director, chair, whatever, there at many other places in New York City the rest of my life. It feels good when you follow your what you like. You take rejection the right way. You're sad for a couple minutes and then you move on.
mhm,
But if it's something you really like, you need to pursue it. And in what you say before, it's how do you find out what you like? I think with my kids and also the residents and fellows and students, I really think it's important to, you kind of said it before, to expose yourself to so many different things.
mhm,
Again, going back to high school, take the most incredible classes, college as well. Eventually, you will. Oh, I have to show this. This is my wife.
Oh, that is so sweet.
We don't get comments that much, but I'm glad that I'm glad
No, that one was important.
it
Yes.
was on. I couldn't resist. But the now I'm all flustered. But it's really important to kind of see, because you don't know that you said before. Sometimes you have to say some yeses to just try it out.
Mhm,
Like I was chairman for 19 months, and I learned a lot. And you learn if you like it or not. If you don't do it, you can't really know. The same
mhm,
thing with giving a lecture or writing a paper or talking to
mhm,
a patient or doing menopause versus
mhm,
dysfunctional bleeding or preeclampsia. And I'll tell you one story from high school again. Um, so we're all straight A students. We wouldn't be here if we weren't, especially in high school and college. And back then, the other great student was Pierluigi, is his name. Amazing philosopher, history buff, knew everything. The kind of person who has so much culture, he can talk about anything and know much more than you do. And this is, we were 16, 17, 18. Um, he was the philosopher, I was a scientist, in our high school class. And to make the long story short, he stayed in Italy, and eventually, his career was a high school, kind of history and philosophy professor. But he wanted much more. He is a big time writer. He probably should have been in a university, challenged and whatever. And one day, years later, when we were probably in the early 50s, we were walking in Perugia, where he lives, a beautiful town with beautiful scenery. And he looked at me and said, we were just talking about life and stuff. And he said, you found out who you are. You're so lucky.
mhm,
You were challenged in life. You had a lot of things. You find out what you're good at. You pursued it. You kind of, who you are. You got to the pinnacle of kind of self learning, self knowing yourself.
mhm,
You know what you're good at, what you're not good at. You find your niche, so to speak. I never did, which was a very sad moment. Because again, it's not that he doesn't like his job, but it just wasn't challenged enough. He couldn't do the
mhm,
things he dreamed about, and he was very, very frustrated. And I don't wish that on anyone.
mhm,
You have to, at any age,
mhm,
even if you're in your 70s, you have
mhm,
to, whatever you'll talk about the North Star soon. You have
mhm,
to find your North Star,
mhm,
and it's not money. These are two other good friends of mine. I just put them here, Marco and Tonino, some of my two best friends, because there's good evidence, for example, that if you make up to, this is a little old data from Easterling, up to 80,000, but probably more 100,000 in the US now. If you make 100,000, that's plenty of money to have a nice house, a nice car,
mhm,
TV, and have a vacation and whatever. If you make 200, 500, a million, it doesn't matter. In fact, the Easterling paradox says that sometimes if you make too much money, then it kind of ruins your life, so to speak. Um, Money should be spent on activities. If my house is probably similar to Marco's and Tonino, we drive similar cars. If I look at Elon Musk or Bill Gates or Michael
mhm,
Jordan, whatever, of course, I'm going to be envious, but I'm never going to get there. I don't need a house that is, $10 million. It's
mhm,
much better to go to dinner with friends, to have a movie night with your loved
mhm,
ones, to spend time on activities, and so doing what you like to do should not be about money. There's
mhm,
plenty of, even randomized studies saying that if you're in high school and you want to make money, you will make less money than if you're in high school and you have a dream and you're going to go
mhm.
after my dream. A dream. I will actually share another story if you don't mind, and then you can interrupt.
No, please. No, I love it. Go ahead.
This is an amazing story. This is my two first degree cousin. So my mom, a sister, um, their dad, wealthy, basically three companies who were doing well. They had a sailing boat. They were driving Porsches and great cars.
Mhm,
Very wealthy. The firstborn takes over. and says to the second one, you have to help me. It's too much here.
Mm-hmm.
Second one liked miniature cars when he was 5, 6 years old.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Carlo, he would repair them, repaint them, knew all the different kinds. And at some point, when he finished high school, he said, I'm not going to university. I'm going to, have a little company called Car Model. His name is Carlo,
Ah.
carmodel.com. And I'm not getting paid for this. And try to, kind of buy little cars that I like and sell them.
Mm-hmm.
30 years later, all three companies have failed from my uncle. So my cousin now is employed in another company and has had to sell some assets and etc.
Mm-hmm.
And Car Model, I think, is the second or third largest car
Wow.
model company in the world.
Wow. Yeah.
He has millions of cars. He has huge anchors, whatever. You could fit planes in there.
Mm.
Full of cars of this size, and
Yeah.
he
Wow.
followed his dream. He did. He
Mm-hmm.
loved it. He followed it. He was the world expert probably when he was 20 already. He got his wife, the whole. He lives like in a 10,000, in a small, real small town. I think that 10% of the town probably works for him now, or work
Wow.
with him, I should say. And that's a good story of you
Mhm.
follow your
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's absolutely very profound. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I was talking about before, then for us, going to our own profession and OBGYN, it's really you have to chart your own course. Some
Mm-hmm.
people follow instructor, all the way to professor and tenure. You can even go to chair,
Mm-hmm.
director, dean, president, whatever. But in the middle is probably more what I really felt was better for me. The father thing, the family thing, certainly the research, writing, and you kind of decide. The left or the right columns here may be your thing, but they don't have to be. I know
Mm-hmm.
many people in our field, and I could name them. Bill Groman probably could have been chair and division director any place. There are so
Mm-hmm.
many other places, people who decided, no, I'm better at NIH grants, or I'm better at, I
Mm-hmm.
just like seeing patients. It's so much. I wanted, when I thought about being a doctor, I thought about helping people, meeting them and finding out what medication would help them best or what
Right.
activity would change their life. So kind of stick to what your dream really was,
Mm-hmm.
and read this book.
I'll
uh,
have to add that to my list. Yeah, I haven't read that yet. Mm-hmm.
this book is great. You got to be you. This is a guy who is actually, as you can see, African American, black, and also gay, and tells really all the details of his life, very open, very refreshingly real, about his life and his struggles. And he didn't care. He was ostracized among whites because of his thing, among blacks because he was gay, among gays because he was black, and almost felt at some point I don't fit anywhere. But he said, you know what? I gotta be me. I gotta be me. I
Mm-hmm.
gotta be me. And look at him, writing books, and he is now, I'm sure, doing well and happy with what he's doing. So for me, to kind of, you know, this is home in Italy, spending time with family. This is, my sister, my sister-in-law. These are my two good friends. The shameful picture from, I see them all the time. I saw both of them, last month in my hometown. This is my MD, PhD older son when we were younger, picking grapes. My family's background, it's very much
Mm-hmm.
agricultural one. Now these are my two older kids and my younger kids,
It's
from the love
beautiful.
I get from them. And all I want to do tomorrow, I'm going to have lunch with Andrea and Pietro. Of course, Cesa and Julia are home, and I spend time with them all the time. It's really key to to strive after your own um, likes,
Mm-hmm.
and remind them yourself. So I know you have a lot more to say about this.
Yeah. No, thank you so much, Dr. Bergela, for sharing all that. And the story that you shared about your friend, about your the philosopher, that when you guys re met later in life, and he said, that story you shared in your book on happiness too. And I remember that was one part of your book that really touched me, because it really highlighted that you could go through life all the way till the end, but if you miss knowing who you are, you miss the whole meaning of life. You're not really savoring life, right? And that's why I think one important thing message to all the listeners here, in our society, our education system, we're taught to learn all these things outside us, all these things about the world, how geometry works, Pythagoras theorem, all of that stuff, everything. But the most important lesson you'll ever learn, and that you need to learn, is self mastery, right? The person who invests in getting to know themselves is the one that will live an extraordinary life. So, and it's never too late to start. Look inward. And, that's actually where I'm actually going to jump in right now with some of my slides and help you with some coaching tools to, help you start this process, right? So, we're talking a lot about like, oh, do what you like to do. For some of us, it's very innate. Some people who are very, they know from a young age, like, oh, this is, yeah, I like this, this is my dream, I'm going to follow. For a lot of people, it might be like, but how do I know? I'll tell you, the secret answer to knowing what you like to do lies in one place within you, and that's your subconscious mind. We all have that part of us that knows exactly what we like to do, and it might be buried by someone telling you at a young age that, oh, that's silly, don't do that. How are you going to make money doing that? How are you going to raise a family if you choose that career path? Or that doesn't look good. This is, a lot of us have also been told that. So sometimes we have dreams, but they've been buried. Okay, so I'm going to take you through a visualization exercise to help you just kind of connect with that subconscious mind. So if I can invite my listeners here to, oops, sorry, I think the slides went off, to just kind of close your eyes for a second, and then we'll jump to the next slide, Dr. Berghella, please. All right, and I'm going to talk you through a few questions here. So close your eyes and access your subconscious mind. And the good news is only you are there. There's no one else, okay? And think about what success looks like for you. And for you, not what your parents expect of you, not what society expects, not what your mentors expect. What do you want? What do you see around you? Where are you standing? What job are you doing? If you're a physician, you could be a doctor in a small town, raising a farm and being the only doctor in town, and that is your idea of success. Visualize it. Be courageous and be vulnerable and picture it. Or you are the head and a chair of a huge research department at an academic center. Visualize it. Let go of any limiting beliefs that say you can't do it. Be brave. Make it as real as possible. See who's standing beside you and what values are important to you in that moment that are inspiring other people. And why are you proud of yourself in that moment? What about that moment is making you feel so fulfilled? Is it people? Is it the action? And most importantly, think about the picture that makes you feel good, not just look good. And really hold on to that vision. Really, really hold on to that. That is your North Star. Okay? Now, whenever you're ready, I'm going to invite all of you to kind of open your eyes and come back with me to the slides here. Thank you for participating in that as well, Dr. Berghella. Um, and that's the idea of the North Star that I talk about. That's your North Star, and you don't have to tell him that that's yours. You have access to that vision now, anytime you like. The first step in creating anything in your life is to visualize it. Every idea, every big company, every project, it started from an idea. What you just did was profound. You just created your idea, your vision for your life. Okay. And now if we go to the next slide, I'm going to talk you through so how, and then one more slide, Dr. Brigada. Thank you. Now, in order for you to, now that you have that vision, right, in order to be able to accomplish that, the most important question you need to ask yourself is why? Why was that important to you? Why did you have that vision? And I really want you to crystallize that down to, like, if you say, I wanted to be a doctor in the middle, like I said, in a small town. It's, most people say, I want to be in this academic center because it sounds good for the, it's the thing that we all assume as a successful physician, right? But if your truth is you want to be out in the middle of nowhere, and you say, that's important to me because I'll be able to have time for my family, I'll be able to live the slow life, I'll be able to take time to do other things that I want in life, because medicine might not be the only thing, and that's fine. Know your why, and keep asking yourself why those things are important. And then, jumping a little bit more, then also then talking about the strengths like we touched on earlier, Dr. Bergella, right? Because now that you have that vision, you need to make sure that vision and your strengths align with each other. Because if you have strengths doing, let's say one of your strengths, is a learner, and like for me, I'm a learner, intellectual. I'm not a maximizer or a strategist, but someone maybe with those skills would be a better CEO to run a company. I know those are not my strengths. I enjoy working with people. I don't love managing a huge group of people. Knowing where your strengths lie and align them with your vision is really important. And then if there are things that you need, the skills you need to make that vision happen, but you don't have them yet, and it's not on your strengths when you do the list, it doesn't matter. Make it your strength. Work on them. So identify those things that I put here as 3 things that you'd like to improve on. Come up with a list of things that you're like, okay, maybe I do want to be a CEO, but I need to learn how to maximize these skills. Maybe I don't have those skills, but there are courses out there I can take. There are books I can read that can teach me, and I will learn. So it's possible to learn. It's possible to expand, right? Expand your strengths, expand your skills, and ultimately play to them. And I think the next thing is also really important is your values, because your values, I like to describe values as the attributes of the person you'd like to be. So think about that vision that you had. What does that person look like? How do they walk? How do they talk? Is that you today? And if not, what work needs to happen to become that person, right? And those are your core values. Like for me, I always share my top 3 core values are, number one is personal growth, and I think it aligns with my learner mindset as well, learner strength, that I always want to be doing something where I can keep learning and keep growing, whether personally or in my career. Second thing is kindness, being able to, in a part of a group where I'm able to be kind to other people and the people around me are kind. I'm making sure I'm in an environment that is loving and supportive, right? And third thing for me is family. So whatever I pick to do as my career, I need to make sure I have time for my family, for my loved ones, and that's important to me. So those are my core values. So whatever I do, I make sure it aligns with these 3 things. And then I kind of bring up this last column you see here is when you're thinking about your goals and what you like to do. There's this famous New York Times columnist, David Brooks, who writes in his book, The Road to Character. He talks about this concept of, whether your goals are resume driven or eulogy driven, right? And think about resume driven as the things you bring to the table, right? The things that contribute to your external success, the things you work on that makes your CV look awesome, just spending your days, writing papers and, sending the academic letter. Those are all your resume driven. And your eulogy driven are deeper, right? It's what people will talk about or describe you when you're not longer here, right? Like, oh, he was a brave person, he was kind, he was honest, he was a happy person, right? Those are all eulogy driven. And like I mentioned earlier, our society and our education system really is structured for you to pursue a career path to be resume driven. You want to be, the people who are revered every day is like, oh, this person got the top score, the best, the most, these exaggerated words of having to always be at the top. You don't need that. It's okay to not pursue just a resume, but maybe be in the middle and say, but you're happy and you're the kind person. Try to kind of balance those. So that's your responsibility to balance both. Because if you're at the top, but you're not nice to everybody, is that really the kind of life that aligns with your values? So just a thought I wanted to leave all of you with, while you're thinking about your goals. And then, so those were ways for you to reflect internally on what you like to do. Now, some people might say, well, I've thought about all this and I still can't figure out what I like to do or what I do well. Then in that case, get some help from the external world, right? So how your sometimes your environment can tell you what you like to do. So I think one good question to help you begin that process is think about a time when you got a compliment about something that you did and it made you very happy. Think about a time and you were like, wow, that felt so good. Now, take it a little deeper, right? Break it down. Why did you feel good about that comment? What were you doing? What was the action that you were doing that you were like, you felt grateful that someone noticed that action and someone took time to compliment that? Why was it important to you? So that action you were doing might be the thing that you enjoy doing. And then the next thing, what was the compliment they gave you? Because that highlights your strengths. Sometimes you don't know your own strengths, but when someone tells you, "Hey, you're really good at bringing people together. You're really good at helping people feel comfortable." Right? That might be your strength, and that might make you a great leader. You didn't realize it that that's a strength that you have, right?
Let me tell you a quick story on that,
Yes,
Kalida. Sorry
please.
to interrupt.
No, no,
The
please go
story
ahead.
I tell often. I was a first year fellow, and there was the roast, to the residents, to the faculty and everybody else. And one of the residents put up a slide with a green journal cover and said, "Oh, are we surprised that Vince Berghella published in the Green Journal? We didn't think he had it in him." And you could take that millions of ways, that comment. But I was like, interesting. But indeed, in residence, I did a small randomized trial on stripping on membranes, and somehow it ended up in the Green Journal. And it was one of my first probably my first significant publication. And I thought and thought about it, and at first I was a little hurt, I must admit. And then I said, you know what? She noticed.
Mm-hmm.
So I did something I liked all by myself because I went to a community residency. This was run in Chinatown. It was
Mm-hmm.
really a work of love, to do this study. And but hey, the Green Journal must have liked it enough, and she noticed. And so, first of all, my strength all of a sudden are noticed. I get
Mm-hmm.
in a way a compliment, because
Mm-hmm.
somebody noticed, and I like it. So it's exactly what you say. That kind of told me I I like doing this and I can do it, and I probably do a decent job. And from then, obviously, the gates open,
Right.
and the floodgates open. But that's my little story on that.
No,
That's
that's great. And that's a perfect example. And that's exactly what I want our listeners to think about. Like think about a moment like that when you did something and someone noticed and someone complimented on you and really think about why, think about what you were doing. And this is really true that a lot of times people might notice your strengths before you do.
Mhm.
Especially if it's your
Absolutely.
mentors, your parents, your loved ones, they might come tell you something that a part of you might never believed you were good at, or maybe at some point you doubted yourself, because we have doubts, we don't even realize that cloud how we function. So pay attention, be attuned to those compliments, and use it to keep getting to know yourself better. Yep.
And for all of you out there, you're also mentors in some ways, even if
Mm-hmm.
you're a junior resident, or medical student.
Mm-hmm.
Notice things in others and tell them.
Mm-hmm.
It's a two-way street. Many people junior to me helped me on my path to finding out what I was good at and told me, you know what, that lecture was good, and I'm like, oh my God, I was so worried, and if you like doing the lectures, if you like the time you spend, slaving on the slides, whatever, and they like it, then finally you find the perfect spot, but again, often, you do something you're forced to, nobody notices, you didn't like it, forget it, never do it again.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, exactly. And I think that takes me to my next slide here, which is okay, let's say you've done the work. Now you kind of have an idea what you want to do, what you like to do, but the most important thing is not about doing it, it's what also is about letting go of what is holding you back in pursuing that wholeheartedly, right? To be able to achieve something, you got to be able to let go of all those limiting beliefs. So I'm going to explain a little bit more about the mindset that comes with this. So, there's a lot of research now that shows, talks about neuroplasticity. People, you may have heard about this, and, the science behind habit forming. So it was interesting, up until 1970s, actually, scientists studied the human brain, and they said, the brain develops these synapses, wiring, it all develops up until you're about 21 years old. You're an adolescent. And at that point, your brain stops developing. Whatever wiring you'd formed in your brain, that's who you are. That's why you might hear a lot of people back in the day, I think like the more older generations will say stuff like, well, you can't teach old dogs new tricks, or, this is just how I am. This is I am who I am. And that's because they've adopted this mindset, which, we call now the fixed mindset or the conditioned mindset, that you say, hey, whatever you've learned, you can't change. But some scientists started to question after that. Then how is it that people after the age of 21 learn a new language, learn a new music, a new instrument, or change personalities completely? That means something must be able to happen in the brain where we can learn new things, right? Not only can we learn, we can unlearn the old things. And that is really what this idea of neuroplasticity is, that even if you have a belief that you had told yourself that you cannot do something, or at some point you might say, well, I want to be, let's say I want to be a national speaker. I'm really passionate about, let's say being physician wellness, national speaker. And then maybe at the back, at some point in my life, someone told me, maybe I had a public speaking event and did poorly, and someone said, oh god, you're a terrible speaker, don't do that again. Maybe I've, think about it like railroad tracks. Whatever our mind process, the way we think about things, we are slowly putting down railroad tracks in our brain, those synapses, right? And maybe I put those railroad tracks completely detour away from public speaking, and I've told myself I can't do it. But if now I realize that that's my goal, then neuroplasticity suggests that I can relay down those tracks so that I can learn to do it. Okay, it's all about unlearning what you knew was true and relearning what you would like to be true. And this also comes back to, a lot of the concept of what we're talking about is that your happiness is your choice. You have a choice. The actions that you do or you take daily that will make you happy, whatever you thought you were doing, if it's not working, put down your railroad tracks. You can do that. Change the way you're looking at a situation. And I'm going to give you a bit more concrete example here with this kind, from everything that I've kind of read, I came up with this, what I call the mindset circle. That might give you a little bit more example, a clearer example. So think about a circumstance. I'm going to bring up this concept of, let's say you're learning a C-section, a cesarean section for the first time. And you're a first year resident, you're learning a C-section, and you're not sure what to do yet. You kind of come out of the OR and you're like, oh, that was terrible. I'm terrible. I'm never going to learn this. Everyone else is so good. Everyone of my classmates are already, my co-residents are way ahead of me. I'm terrible. So right away, what have you done? The circumstances, you had a bad case. The thought that comes is that you're not good enough. How does that make you feel? It makes you feel small. You've already told yourself you can't do this. What's your action going to be? You're just going to continue not taking the effort because you feel like you're not going to get there anyway. And your brain is great at it's a fulfilling prophecy, right? Like confirmation bias. What you tell your brain, it listens to you. It really is. And so your outcome is going to be the next time you go back into that OR, you're probably not going to do much better because you've already told yourself you're not good at this. The other person comes out of the operating room and says, the same circumstance, the C-section didn't go to it. He's like, oh, that case didn't go very well. I have so much to learn. Right away, what is the thought? It says that I can learn more. It's the story you're telling yourself, the lens you're choosing to look at the same situation is that I need to learn more. So how does that person feel? They feel empowered. They feel like, oh, I need to go, the action might be going to grab a textbook and looking it up and see, okay, so what are the steps of a C-section? And what is the reality? Next time that person goes back into the room, they're probably going to try to do better, right? So the circumstance doesn't have to change, but the lens you choose to view the world is really what impacts your reality. And a lot of times the lens that we're viewing the world is based from our past experiences, which are those old railroad tracks that you have laid down back in the day. So, I just want to share this to challenge everyone to realize that whatever outcome you want in your life, think of it backwards. Regardless of the circumstance, you can't control that. But think about the outcome you want, and think about what is the lens you need to use to view the world to have that outcome. What is the story you need to tell yourself to have that outcome? And you can change the story you tell yourself. Okay. And that's really what this comes down to. And I love this quote. If any one of our listeners, Viktor Frankl, in his he's an Austrian psychologist who was, unfortunately, in the concentration camps during the Holocaust. His whole family, his wife, everyone was in there, and he lost all his family members in those concentration camps. It was a difficult time, terrible, terrible time. But during that whole experience, he kept thinking that there's got to be a purpose and a meaning to this. When he finally got out of the camp, he writes this amazing book, which is profound. It's, Man's Search for Meaning. If anyone hasn't read it, I strongly encourage everyone to read that book. I think it's just such a deep book and helps you reflect a lot. And this beautiful quote that comes from there is, between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space is your power to choose your response. So, and that's where your growth and freedom lies. So, no matter what the circumstances, no matter what people are telling you, you have a choice to choose what you want, and you can change how you look at it. Okay. And even in this slide kind of highlights the same point again. Everything can be taken from a man except the freedom to choose one's attitude in any given circumstance. So no matter how bad the situation, how much you think you're not going to be able to accomplish, you can change your lens, pick a different lens, and pick a lens that serves you, not the lens that holds you back. It's in your hands. So again, just to summarize this kind of idea of, when you know what you want to do, having the right mindset is by being curious. If you feel like you're hearing the thoughts at the back of your head saying you can't do this, pause and be curious. Where's that thought coming from? Is that someone that told me that thought in the past, back in the day? Does that serve me today? Is that true? Be curious and rewire it. Tell yourself what you need to hear. Change the narrative. And it takes practice. Some people might say, what, Kavita, so are you just asking me to lie to myself and create this new ideology that might not be true? No, you're not lying to yourself. You're reforming those new railroad tracks. It's going to take time for you to believe this new thought process. It's not a lie. It's the truth you are telling yourself that is going to help you on your path. Okay, and I think with that we have our next session here.
Yeah. Let me actually. I'm gonna share something that came up, if you don't mind. You
Please.
talked about something that really hit me and before, and made me think a lot, about the eulogy thing. About the fact that, and in 4 days it'll be 5 years since my father died.
Sorry.
And my brother and I gave him his eulogy, and it was a very positive one and stuff. But my
Mhm.
dad was a tough guy, and one of the nurses got up and talked as well, not only about some of the nice things, but also about the fact that he ruled by example, but he did rule. And I think about that all the time. I think my image, when I close my eyes, is a big photo. I like photos of a huge family, with my wife, my 4 kids, eventually their wives or girlfriends or whatever. Actually, one of my nephews um, is a trans male, and one of my wife's cousin is a gay guy in Italy. So all mix of cultures, and his boyfriend is black, and so we have a very diverse family. Even if I
Mhm.
grew up in a small little town, and very uh, unified, so to speak, in religion and culture in Italy. And going back to my maximizer thing, to being a maximizer, making sure that the whole do well. And when you ask me why, and this is a little bit shameful to say, but I guess I can say it in public. Some of us want to have an impact, on the
Mhm.
world, and that photo also gives me a think of immortality. I passed on examples of hard work, of hopefully honesty, of positivity, of working on your strengths and happiness, like we're talking today, of leadership. and everybody's going to do it in different ways. My wife is just recently starting to work in a shop, and she loves it. As I say, my older two sons are kind of following their dreams. Hopefully, I don't know what my 2-year old is going to do. Maybe a musician or something different that I didn't even imagine. And maybe my little one will be a ballerina. I have no idea. And I certainly won't force them. But my wish really, and I think the residents and fellows and junior faculty here know, it's really nice to look at people, know that everybody has something good inside, um,
Mm-hmm.
telling them and saying,
Mm-hmm.
you know what, you can't write a paper, you hate research, but when you talk to a patient, you're one of the best person I've ever seen. Or, this person had a loss, you're the best person to talk about stillbirth. I never met anybody as empathic as you are. And for example, not that person. I think I'm empathic, but not as empathic as Alexa, our field therapy nurse. And doing what you do, what you like to do is that, is like you said it beautifully before, and I want to kind of end. I think our hour, we're kind of at the top of the hour on that thought. Um, the Oracle at Delphis say Nazi Sauton in Greek, know yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know yourself by yourself, but also listen, like you said, I want to say it 10 times. Listen to others, and they tell you, hey, look, you're good at fashion modeling. Your shoes are wonderful. It could be anything. It doesn't need to be world hunger. Like you're curing the world from hunger. Um, Whatever it is, it can be more or less trivial to others. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about what other people think.
Mm-hmm.
Really, don't worry. Only
Mm-hmm.
worry about your North Star and what you like. I don't know if you want to have your last thoughts on that. Final.
Yeah. Yeah, no, no, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that kind of wraps it up beautifully is, you know, self mastery. I just want to keep reminding everybody again, be focus on awareness. When people talk about, self love and self care, I kind of highlight this topic a little bit too, that, there's a lot of talk on wellness now. And the best way to love yourself is not, going to the spa and going, people talk about, oh, I did a 2-hour meditation. Like, all of that stuff is good. It's external, it's self-care, but the best way to love yourself is to get to know yourself. So invest the time in getting to know who you are, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what you want to work on, what kind of person you want to become, what actions you need to do to make those happen, because it is all possible, and that is going to let you live the most rich and meaningful life that aligns with who you are. So, I think that's probably what I'd like to leave our listeners with today.
I want to be a life coach like you.
You are Dr.
No,
Berghella.
no. Anyway, so we have a lot more to cover actually,
Mhm.
and we probably have another 2 or 3 sessions on this because there's so much and so much research, so much evidence, like Kavita covered. The next one is going to be 8 a.m. Eastern on January 26th, and we'll see you there.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Bye bye. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thanks for being with us.